Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and you don't need to see my soundproofing over there, so let me. There we go, a little bit better. All right, and Infinity Countdown Champions, issue number 1 of 2. Okay, so again, I'm doing a bunch of live videos because I wound up having some kind of a insulin overload, whatever, uh, infinite insulin crash earlier last night, so I didn't get out nearly as many comic books as I wanted to. So here's some more comic book reviews. Okay, so Infinity Countdown Champions issue number 1. I talked to Jim Zub live, in person about this on Free Comic Book Day at Gotham Central Comics and Collectibles in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. And yeah, they this was he volunteered to, he was asked if he wanted to do this because they wanted to do a champions book just for the sake of conversation. It wasn't mandatory, but they asked if he wanted to do it anyway, if he wanted to be the one to write it. And he jumped on the opportunity because Sean Isaacs, who's his writer for, excuse me, who is the co creator for Champions currently. Basically, he's the artist for Champions. He was not going to be available to do this book anyway, and he had to catch up because he was asked to jump on another book because somebody else had to bow out for some reason. So Sean Isaacs got seriously delayed doing his book by fixing somebody else's stuff. So Jim Zub was like, "Yeah, this will give Sean some time to catch up." So boom, we're good. So awesome, awesome, and I'm glad that he did this because I'd rather him be telling this story than somebody who doesn't actually know the characters. So he did write in Amka into this. That's Snowguard, so you can actually see her right down here at the bottom. So we just got her introduced. I don't actually have the physical comic book for Champions number 21 because Diamond Select screwed my comic book store out of that particular shipment and a couple other ones. So I had to get on Comixology. So it's there in the ether. Anyway, so make sure you read that one first, and then you could jump on this one so you know who this Snowguard character actually is. And they're just calling her Amka for now. But anyway, so Sam Alexander gets a message from his Black Nova Corps helmet. It's like, oh, I didn't see that comment. I'm sorry, guys. I looked up at the last moment and just it fades away immediately. So anyway, they send a message out. Help! We're being attacked. And we know this stuff from the Infinity Countdown books that are written by Jerry Duggan. And Warbringer is just going around. Warbringer, essentially the leader for all of the Chitauri. He's killing them left or he's killing the Nova Corpsmen and anybody who's trying to defend the Power Stone. They're stones now. They're not gems. The Infinity Gems, the Power Stone of the Infinity Stones. Um, he was trying to go after that and a whole bunch of other things. And fortunately, there was some amazing Power Stone saxophone playing by Drax the Sax Destroyer. It was actually great. I can't explain how good it was. Now this obviously happens in some way before spoilers in the previous issue of Infinity Countdown. Galactus was turned from the Lifebringer back to the Devourer because he devoured the planet that Hank Pym, aka Ultron, and it's mostly Ultron at this point. Hank Pym is actually trapped. His soul is actually trapped in the Soul Gem, but Ultron, he destroyed. I believe he destroyed Ultron. It's hard to tell exactly what happened there. If not, that means somehow he's still around. He's directing all this stuff. I'm presuming, and it sounds like somebody's hurting a dog outside. If that keeps on happening, I might have to go outside and whoop some booty because nobody hurts dogs in my presence. Nobody should hurt animals. Period. Anyway, yeah, I'm going full FEMA. So what happened? I'm like all sorts of distracted. That's a problem with a live video. So yeah, I know that a lot of the stuff for Infinity Countdown was delayed a little bit. So I'm wondering if I think that this was actually delayed in some regards because I believe this was supposed to come out earlier. Regardless, it doesn't matter. There is that little disparity. Is this actually Ultron that he's talking to? There's actually Ultron devices here communicating with each other. So I don't like that confusion. I'm never a fan of confusion in the comic books when there's crossovers by multiple different writers because now you're wondering, was this meant to be? Was this an accident? What's going on? and it just requires that much more context. That's realistically that's fine for when I review this comic book much later as a total arc, if I actually choose to do that, if the story is good enough. For right now, it's very confusing. It's later that influencers such as myself and other reviewers, YouTubers, website guys, whatever, when we go back and explain the stuff that nobody else is really getting to. Comics Watching just read this a couple minutes ago. Loved it first time reading Champions. Great traditional story. Excited to see how issue 2 goes over. Yeah, because it's not that much of a surprise if you read issue number 21 of Champions. I would never give this spoiler otherwise, but they've already showed the cover for issue 2. And I'm going to show you the cover for issue 2. Boom. The next issue is right here. See, Warbringer goes to get into a fight with Thanos, it seems, but that's not actually what's happening. He actually says, what? No, to get into a fight with you would be suicide. So, of course, no Comics Watching. I have that here. I'm gonna do that later. Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't keep on answering comments because I keep on getting distracted, obviously. Adsit is wondering like what's going on. Who's this Sam guy? Because who's this Black Nova Corpsman Sam? What's going on there? So this is going to be interesting if those two actually get to meet. Scott Adsit, I think, is he's back to being the director, so to speak, of the Nova Corps. That happened in the Jerry Duggan Deadpool comic book. So Jerry Duggan writing both books, it makes sense, right? Something that is interesting though is that Warbringer's like, I'm not going to fight you directly, Thanos. Instead, I'm going to do this other thing instead. Read the comic book to understand exactly what he's going to do, and it's genocidal. It's insanity, and it seems like exactly the kind of thing that he would do, that Warbringer would do. So the champions now have to try and stop this from happening, and that is going to be a terrifying thing to behold. If I had to make a complaint about this comic book, I would say that, with all due respect to Emilio Laso, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Wonderful artist. Like, the art in this is great. I'm going to say one thing negative about the art in this comic book. Literally one. Only one. And that is Thanos. The Thanos that's drawn in here, it's a good rendition of Thanos, but it looks like the Walmart exclusive Marvel Legends 6-inch figure of Thanos, as opposed to, let's say, my Thanos that you see directly above my finger up here, which is the Diamond Select Thanos, which also comes with Mistress Death, love it, or even the Build-A-Figure from the Marvel Legends one, which actually looks like the version of Thanos from the movie Infinity War. No, this is actually a very cartoonish Thanos. That I was not a fan at all of the Walmart exclusive version. It looks way too cartoony, and Emilio chose to use that version of Thanos in here. That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. It's just like, it's not the rendition of Thanos that I would enjoy reading. But one of the things I have to say best about this comic book, and I imagine that this is the editor, it might actually be Jim Zub, but it might also be the editor. I have to throw it in there. It's usually Annalise Bisa who would do this, but it might be Jordan D. White also. Anyway, there is a whole lot of trying to find them specifically. Oh, here we go. The little narration box, the text boxes where they actually tell you what happened. Oh, something happened. You find in this issue. Oh, something happened here. Don't worry, you can find that in this issue. And that happens 2 more times in this comic book. And honestly, I've said this before, but just like John Byrne would say, every single comic book that somebody reads is somebody's first. Every comic book that you make is somebody's first comic book. So every review that somebody does is going to be their first review. So if you don't know, the best thing about Marvel Comics, in my opinion, going way back to the original, like Tales to Astonish and everything. Yes, I read those. All of those, the Tales of Suspense, everything, amazing, amazing books. They would always have the references back to another issue. And as Marvel started to branch out and make more independent, like when Tales to Astonish wound up becoming, their own comic books for the individual people who were involved. Ant-Man eventually got, kind of his own comic book. He really joined the Avengers. When Thor got his own comic books from Tales of Mystery, Journey into Mystery, excuse me. Captain America and Iron Man got their own from Suspense. Just, wow. As they started branching out, they would constantly refer back to a bunch of the other comic books that such and such story would happen in. that was always my favorite part of Marvel. DC would never really do that for the most part. Marvel did. And I loved that because it was a way for me to go back and find those comic books back before comic book stores were a popular thing, back before there were comic book conventions that were larger than the basement in a hotel lobby or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And you go down there, would just be dusty. There'd just be guys with comic. It would just be a place for comic book retailers or regular people to sell their comic books at. And I loved that. I loved that ridiculous, stinky feeling. You know what I'm saying? Just going down there and like nobody cosplayed. Why would you cosplay? People would be like, dude, you look like an idiot dressed like Spider-Man. Plus, it's hot down here. You know what I'm saying? My comic books are melting. What are you doing dressing up? So I loved those days. I miss those days. Nowadays, comic book conventions, they're about a lot more than just the comic books. A whole lot more. It's not about the comic books for the most part anymore. It's supererogatory that comic books are even there in the first place. So I love that this comic book actually has it, and it's the one thing that we're missing. I actually asked Heather Antos about it before on a Reddit AMA. I was one of the more respectful people. Gee, go imagine, go figure that. But it's just like do is it actually mandatory for people to, or is it completely up to the editor to do that anymore? And she says it's completely up to the individual editors to do that. I try to when I can, but for the most part, it is what it is. And that turned into a bit of a private conversation also. But regardless, yeah, that was eye opening, and it was sad to hear that nobody pushes for that to happen anymore. I'm kind of hoping that CB Cebulski starts pushing for that to happen more because seeing four different references to other comic books really made me go, yes, she does, and that just makes me laugh because I don't care about any of that stuff saying. So I love the idea that it triggers silly little people. Um, but I love that that was actually put in here because it genuinely made the comic book even better than it already was. It's great standalone, but regardless. One thing that the most important thing that Jim Zub told me about this comic book and part two is that there will actually be some long-term repercussions for it, and that again is something that I think for the most part all of us have complained about with events, be it Marvel or DC. DC is usually really good at this. They're usually very good at this. Marvel, not so much. You have a big event that everybody gets really excited over, but there's no real fallout afterwards. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me. So like something like Civil War, the original one, huge fallout. You know what I'm saying? Civil War. Very happy that they that Jim Zub specifically said that this comic book and part two are actually going to matter. That's important to me. That's important to us as fans. So it's a tie-in for an event, and the event I'm just not as excited about as I really want to be, especially after the thing that happened with Galactus. I feel like it was just a waste, an absolute waste. But whatever. I'm happy that Jim Zub recognizes that one fallacy that Marvel has, that their events don't really have any kind of weight. There's no gravitas to them, but he's taking it upon himself to make sure that his